There are moments on live television that stop you mid-sip of your morning tea. Moments where you're half listening from a kitchen, maybe scrolling your phone, and then something pulls you back to the screen with a kind of quiet urgency you didn't expect at that hour of the morning. This was one of those moments. And if you were watching Good Morning Britain when it happened, you almost certainly felt it too. That sudden shift in the studio energy, that barely there crack in a voice that's usually so steady, so warm, so effortlessly composed. Ben Shephard has been a fixture in British living rooms for years. You know his face. You know that smile, the kind that puts guests at ease before they've even finished sitting down. You know the easy warmth he carries into every conversation, whether he's interviewing a pop star, covering a breaking news story, or gently navigating something deeply personal with a guest who's clearly nervous. He has this rare ability on live television to make even the most uncomfortable moments feel safe. So when that composure, even briefly, even just for a flicker, visibly shifted, viewers noticed. Immediately. Completely. And here's what's fascinating about that kind of moment. It wasn't a scripted emotional reveal. It wasn't a pre-planned segment designed to generate reaction. It was something far more powerful than that. It was real. And in an era where audiences have become extraordinarily good at detecting the difference between performed emotion and genuine human feeling, real lands differently. It lands harder. It stays longer. It gets replayed. What many viewers picked up on wasn't just the visible emotion itself, it was everything surrounding it. The slight pause before continuing. The way the words came a little more carefully afterward, chosen with a precision that suggested he was consciously steadying himself. The briefest glance away from camera that felt less like a presenter technique and more like a private person collecting themselves in a very public space. Television is built on performance, on polish, on the illusion of effortless professionalism. And so when something genuinely unscripted breaks through that surface, even for just a few seconds, it creates this strange and powerful intimacy between the presenter and everyone watching at home. People online began sharing the clip almost immediately. That's telling in itself. Social media clips from morning television rarely spread with that kind of speed unless something genuinely unexpected happened. This wasn't a heated debate or a controversial soundbite, the clips that usually travel fastest. This was quieter than that, more personal. And somehow, because of that quietness, it felt more significant. Viewers weren't sharing it to argue about it. They were sharing it because they'd felt something watching it, and they wanted to know whether other people had felt it too. That's a very specific kind of viral moment. It's not shock. It's not outrage. It's recognition. Viewers saw something human in a space that's usually so carefully managed, and that recognition felt worth passing on. Now, what exactly brought Ben to that emotional edge is something that many people watching will have interpreted differently depending on their own emotional context that morning. Television has this layered quality where the same moment can land in completely different ways depending on who's receiving it. Some viewers will have been moved simply by the subject matter, whatever conversation or story was unfolding in that moment. Others will have been moved by watching Ben specifically, someone they've trusted and welcomed into their mornings for years, showing a side of himself that rarely surfaces on screen. And then there are those viewers, and there are always these viewers, who were simply caught off guard. They weren't prepared for it. They had their guard down at that time of the morning, in the comfortable routine of the breakfast show, and suddenly something genuinely emotional broke through. That vulnerability, even brief, even carefully held together, it changes something in how an audience feels about a presenter. Not in a pitying way. Not in a way that undermines authority or professionalism. Quite the opposite, actually. There's a specific kind of trust that builds between an audience and a television personality when they witness something genuine. When the mask, however briefly, isn't entirely in place. It's not weakness. It reads as humanity. And humanity, real visible humanity on a morning program, is rarer than it should be. What makes Ben Shephard particularly interesting to watch in moments like this is precisely because of how composed he usually is. He's not a presenter who regularly wears his personal emotional life on air. He's warm, yes. Empathetic, absolutely. But there's a measured quality to how he presents, a professionalism that never quite disappears even in most emotional interview segments. So when something visibly moves him, the contrast is striking. The deviation from the baseline is what makes the moment visible. If a different presenter, someone more naturally expressive, had the same reaction, it might have read differently, softer, perhaps, or less surprising. With Ben, the unexpectedness of it amplifies everything. Some viewers watching online in the hours after also found themselves reflecting on something broader, the particular emotional weight that comes with long careers in live television. Ben has been doing this for a long time. He has sat across from guests discussing grief, illness, tragedy, joy, triumph. He has held space for people in their most vulnerable moments. And there's a cost to that kind of work that isn't always visible. Empathy at that scale, repeated over years, leaves marks. The ability to remain present with someone else's pain, really present, not just professionally present, doesn't come without accumulating something of your own. Many viewers seem to sense that, even without being able to articulate exactly what they were feeling. There's also something worth noting about the specific atmosphere of the Good Morning Britain studio that morning. Those of you who watch regularly will know that the show has a distinct emotional rhythm. It moves quickly, balances the serious and the light, navigates tonal shifts that would be genuinely difficult to manage even in a scripted environment. Doing that live, with real guests, real stories, breaking news, requires a kind of emotional agility that most people watching from home probably don't fully appreciate. And sometimes, within that rushing current of live television, a moment will surface that simply cannot be moved past at the show's usual pace. This felt like one of those moments. Like the studio itself briefly slowed down around it. The people who watch morning television regularly develop genuine emotional connections with the presenters they see. This isn't something that gets discussed enough in serious media conversations, but it's real and it's significant. For many viewers, particularly those watching alone, those who are older, those going through difficult periods of their own lives, the Good Morning Britain presenters are a form of consistent, familiar company. Ben Shephard's face appearing on screen at that hour carries association and comfort built up over years of mornings. So when he visibly struggles with something, even briefly, those viewers don't just observe it from a distance. They feel it with him. The parasocial bond in breakfast television is extraordinarily strong, and moments like this are part of why. It's also worth thinking about what the moment asked of Ben professionally, because that dimension tends to get overlooked in the emotional conversation that follows. Continuing to present live television, while visibly moved, is genuinely difficult. There is no pause button. There is no second take. The show moves forward whether you're ready or not, and the skill required to stay present, to keep the conversation going, to honor both the emotional truth of what's happening and the professional obligations of live broadcasting. That's not small. And from everything viewers and commentators observed in the clip, he handled it with exactly the grace you would expect from someone with his experience, which somehow made it more moving, not less. The conversation online in the aftermath was striking for its tone. So much social media discourse around television moments tends toward the critical, the hot take, the cynical read, the search for the angle that undermines. But the reaction to this moment was notably different. Warm. Sympathetic. People weren't looking for a story behind the story. They weren't speculating about whether it was calculated for effect. The genuineness of it seemed to be taken as given, almost universally, by people who watched it. And that says something both about Ben specifically and about the audience's ability to read authentic emotion when they encounter it. Some people noted that it's been a period of considerable personal and professional transition for Ben Shephard more broadly. Though, as always with public figures, what we see on television is only ever a fraction of what's actually being navigated in someone's life. It would be careless to assume too much. What viewers can say with confidence is that whatever the context, whatever the specific emotional trigger, what they witnessed felt personal. It felt real. And it felt like the kind of moment that a person carries with them privately, even when they're standing in front of a camera with millions of people watching. And maybe that's exactly why it resonated so deeply. Because all of us carry things privately. All of us have moments where the professional composure we present to the world becomes briefly transparent to something more honest underneath. Most of us aren't doing that on live national television, but the recognition is universal. We know what it feels like to be moved in a moment when you weren't expecting to be. We know what it costs to hold it together in public. We know the particular exhaustion and the particular dignity of carrying emotion quietly. Shephard, in that moment, was doing something deeply human in a deeply visible space. And people recognized themselves in it, even at 8 o'clock in the morning over their cornflakes. That's the strange and specific power of live television at its best. Not the set pieces. Not the planned exclusives. Not the polished celebrity interviews. The moments that genuinely stay with audiences are almost always the unplanned ones, the pauses, the glances, the slight cracks in the voice that no producer scripted and no presenter intended. The moments where the human being is briefly more visible than the broadcaster. This was one of those moments. And perhaps that's why people are still talking about it now. Not because of what was said exactly, but because of what was felt. In that studio. On that screen. And in living rooms across the country where people were watching, quietly, and feeling something too. What did you notice when you watched it? Did the moment land the way it seems to have landed for so many other viewers? Was there something about it that stayed with you after the show ended? Something you found yourself thinking about later that day, in a quiet moment? Because sometimes the most powerful television doesn't ask you to react immediately. Sometimes it just sits with you, gently. Like a morning you didn't expect to remember.